So this is a completely different kind of video that I'm putting out here on the channel for y'all today. This is a response to a video called Will Phantasy Star Online 2 Fail in the West by Zero RPG. Now this isn't to put him on blast by any point. In fact, he's a huge fan of the game. He's been playing over in Japan since day one, and he brings up a lot of really interesting questions to kind of ponder. And having watched that video actually a few times now and have really kind of tried to think on his words and his perspective, I want to add my own to the conversation because I think that there's definitely a difference that we have in opinion. And I think that's why I wanted to make a response video so that we can have this kind of conversation, that I can go into more detail as to my thoughts, especially as somebody who has waited for the North American release for almost 8 years, having only just played in Japan since October, being that there was actual hope for this game coming to the West, and I really wanted to see what it was all about. So again, don't put him on blast. Don't go hate on him for his opinion. I would encourage you to actually watch his video. I'll include a link in the description below for you to go check it out for yourselves and think about it. I think that the best thing we can do here on YouTube, on social media, is have conversations and have difference of opinions. And if we can communicate those respectfully, that's what it's all about. And that's us being the best kind of humans that we can be and the best kind of gamers that we can be. So in summary of his video, and again, go check it out, he talks about that it's old, that anyone who is actually remotely serious has actually played this game already, that the game actually has an established community over in Japan. For number 3, they say the game caters to a niche audience, namely that of fans of anime and having all that different anime crossovers, so it's a very small kind of audience. And number 4, the other games have really come along and already improved on the formula, and he kind of lists off Monster Hunter. And so I want to address these kind of one by one, but before I dive into kind of his points, I want to actually kind of bring up and maybe turn the concept on its head of what is a failure, what is a dying game. And I think that there's obviously popular opinion seems to think that it's something like cancel culture, in which that a game's community just like ups and leaves in and of itself all at once, or like within a very quick amount of time. And obviously there are examples of that. And obviously there is a real business side to that too. However, I want to say and bring up the idea that failure is way more personal than some kind of mass exodus of a game. Games fail and die all the time on an individual level. You might really enjoy a game and could play that game for years and years and years, but it might reach a point in which that you're not very happy with the game overall. And it's perhaps at that point maybe to step away or take a break. So I want to say that instead of failure, whether it's perceived by 51% of any kind of gaming population, failure is going to be a very personal thing when it comes to this game. The problem and concern I have with that is namely that it can also be very isolating. If the game doesn't necessarily resonate with you, there's nothing wrong with you. That's perfectly fine. But if you wanted to be a part of something, if you wanted to be a part of this community, Phantasy Star Online 2, for example, but it could be any other game, that failure can, again, be very isolating. You could feel like you're alone. And that's kind of where I think the real danger, especially when it comes to social media, comes into play. Now, for example, like when we talk about failure, let's talk about the other side of it, success. Like, what is success for this game? Again, that's going to be very personal, one-on-one defined. Namely, let's say if the only reason you're going to play a game is because it's popular, it's number 1 on YouTube or Twitch, well, I would argue that you're going to miss out on a lot of really good games. There was a time in my life that I did that. I would only play a game if it received a 9 or higher on a review score. And now with social media, with Twitch streaming, it's easy to kind of take the review score and turn it into viewers for any particular streamer, popular or not. Now, one thing I do want to say is you might not know this about me, but we've actually run some experiments regarding games are failing and games are dying videos over on our main channel, Work to Game. And I actually hope to dive into the data here in the next couple of weeks or months, just kind of showing you guys behind the scenes why these videos are great subscriber growers. They're not the best money makers, so usually the general consensus is somebody makes a dying video because they want to get paid or something like that. You're not going to make a lot of money off those videos. You're going to grow though. It's really eye-catching, and that's my major concern when it comes to this entire platform that I am now speaking on right here for you today. It's that extreme side of it, that everything has to be hot or cold to an extreme, because that's what's going to grab people's attention. Coming in and saying, yeah, it's a fun game, It doesn't necessarily gain traction, and it's unfortunate. It's human nature, and there's a lot of data that I want to share with you guys later on that, and we'll do that. I'll be sure to post on Twitter when that video is coming. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of conversation that's kind of derived from it, just based off of my numbers alone, but there's a real curiosity that I've had with a lot of top creators on the platform as to why they kind of lean into that. And namely, it's because it drives subscribers massively. It's ridiculous in my mind. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't actively negatively promote the game. A lot of the assumption I've seen is that you're telling people not to play this game, and that's actually the opposite of what happens. We've seen from our own data that it actually drives more people into the game itself, because gamers are curious by nature. So it basically has them ask the question, what's going on? And so if you say a game is failing, or it failed, or it's dying, or it's dead, like at the end of the day, that's going to drive more people into the game itself. And I don't know if that was the natural intention, but it is something very interesting about gamers overall. So hopefully at this point, I've at least, I guess, identified that when I look at failure, I look at it at an individual level, not at a global level, not a mass exodus, because those things are so rare that happens. It's more often than not that a game is going to quote unquote fail on a personal level for you as a player. So now let me just go ahead and dive back into the 4 main points that Zeo makes. And the first one being it's old. Anyone who's remotely serious about playing the game has already played it. And I would say that the oldness of the game, if you look at it mature, right? Like certain things in life get better with age. And one of the things that I've felt that I've seen over the last couple of years, especially the last decade, is a lot of games that are new and hyped and exciting come in and they're incomplete. They're not fully fleshed out. They're what's called the MVP. I'm a software dev. I live and breathe in the MVP, meaning the minimal viable product. And gamers get frustrated by that. And that is more than anything else leads to this mass sense of frustration overall. And to have a game come in at 2020 and say, yeah, we figured it out. And not only that, but a roadmap for future content for things to come, because we can look over at Japan and see, well, they've got more episodes, they've got more content. Obviously, we're going to see that content roll out over here. So that relationship, whether it's going to fail on an individual level at any one time, is going to ebb and flow. So I might enjoy the game and I might take a break and there might be an update and that might bring me back to the game. So overall, that's going to be one thing of it is. Now, as far as anybody who is remotely serious, I would say there's multiple categorizations of gamers themselves. Yes, the diehard of the diehard, they've been playing. And just like Zeo here, and others have been playing in Japan since day one, and it's only gotten easier since then. However, I haven't. And I would consider myself like a very hardcore fan when it comes to Phantasy Star, but maybe you would disagree. And that's what I would say is that fandom, being excited about a game, isn't a light switch. It isn't binary. It's going to be a spectrum. It's a floating point, bringing in my engineering mindset. It's like there are varying degrees. You can find that, and I've shared this personally, that I have a relationship with playing this game with my family and my brother and my friends. And sometimes their interest isn't as powerful as mine, but that doesn't make them less interested in actually playing the game. And so by having less hurdles means that they're going to more or less be able to play, and we're going to enjoy the game over here just like we did back in the day. Okay, so the game already has an established community over in Japan. Yes, this is actually kind of the biggest point that you make, that Zeo makes in this case, is that, I don't see a lot of people making the full-time jump and leaving their counterparts, especially if they're actively playing the game in Japan. If there was some kind of like your account and your character transfers, or there's some kind of shared world here, that would make sense. But because of the hardline indifference between this game, the biggest point that I think he makes is that, if you're already established and playing over in Japan, well, I would be hard pressed to see that anybody wants to come and level up 2 characters, unless there is some aspect of friends that are playing within the English-speaking world that you want to go take part in. But the game is readily translated, fan translated in Japan, and so it has an active community. That I don't think that's going to go away, and I don't know if it's going to happen in like any kind of migration, namely because of the investment and time that people have already put over in Japan. Now, the game caters to a niche audience. That could be a strength, at the end of the day. Like people, just like with Blue Protocol that's coming out, has very anime inspired. Like there's going to be different tastes for different people. Now, is this game going to be number 1 on Twitch, on YouTube, maybe. If you guys, if you are interested, if enough people want to share out the video and help bring people into the game, it's really on the community whether we want to, where we want it to fall within the rankings. It all depends on if we're actively engaged in this kind of content. If we actively go watch other creators' content regarding Phantasy Star Online 2, there's a role that we play as fans. There's a role that we play as consumers in ranking in and of itself. As weird as it is, that's something that I've obviously discovered being hands-on in this world for the last 3 years. So that's complicated, right? Who cares if it's niche? I think that's a strength. In fact, we could use some more niche as well. Like the mainstream in and of itself is great. It does bring in a lot of people, but sometimes it's nice to have an established community that isn't so focused in on like world domination. Like, oh, we have to get all the Fortnite players. Well, I mean, that could be fun for a little while, but eventually that might be frustrating. It's going to be an ebb and flow. I like it when the creators can really make something that they want to make. I like Phantasy Star Online, and I really hope that it succeeds here in the West. And there's an audience that's hungry for it. The question, though, when you pair that with the established community and the people who've already played it, that could be when you put it all together is where Zio's coming from, and I can understand the point. Because if that audience is already being served in Japan, it's going to have a harder, time, getting a foothold here when we're talking about mass adoption. But I think there's going to be people who play it, and the fact that it's coming to PC, Xbox, hopefully more platforms here in the West with crossplay, further uniting and strengthening that core community, I think it's going to have a long life here. And then his final point brings up other games that have improved on the formula, Monster Hunter. That's actually what I said when I was playing Monster Hunter. I was like, it feels like I'm playing Phantasy Star Online. And I have issues with Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter doesn't do what Phantasy Star Online does. It just had an expansion, and I was able to watch Let's Plays of it and get a kind of a fix for Monster Hunter. But its lack of persistence and a few things that it has that Phantasy Star Online, I think, too, just nails, especially when you get your party together and you go out. You can easily form that group, and you can see them running around in your game. Those kind of things mean more to me. And I wish Monster Hunter actually would become more like Phantasy Star in that regards. I think it did improve in certain aspects, and I think that's where these games don't exist in a bubble. That's where there's a lot of strength in these games kind of learning from each other. And if there's ever to be a Phantasy Star Online 3, I think that for fans, I think that's about playing the game and communicating this is something we want. And hopefully, within whatever amount of time, that if we do see a follow-up to this franchise, to this game itself, that they can also go learn from the other games out there that are doing really good things. So I don't see having improved games coming out, especially ones that don't continually exist. We can always have the debate about Monster Hunter specifically, but if you go just look at numbers, like Monster Hunter acts almost like a single-player game, huge spike, lots of players, and then eventually kind of tapers off. And when you have games that are persistent, that continually receive updates, they're going to keep having those spikes and those ebbs and those flows, and continually bring in new players excited about that conversation because they're being played, they're having content generated around them, they're being streamed. And so, obviously, like he concludes that, who knows? That's his ultimate conclusion to the question that he asks. And I would say Phantasy Star will be a success in the West. I think there's going to be lots of people who are excited about playing it. I think they're going to play it for a while, and then they might go play something else, and then they might come back. And in that relationship of that ebb and flow, you're going to find diehard players that are excited that it exists here, just like you have in Japan, and I think it's going to continue to grow. Will it fail you at some point? Maybe. Like every game will. At some point you're going to get frustrated with it because variety is the spice of life, and that's all we can really do as gamers. And there's a lot of really great games out there. So don't think of games like you did when we were all kids, where you maybe got one a year for your birthday, and if hopefully it was a good game that would occupy a lot of your time, or at least your summer in that regards. Games are more living than they've ever been before, and that's actually a really good thing. And the challenge and the concern is always going to be within the social media aspect, in which that you have kind of that aspect in which people make salacious things just to be able to kind of drive growth, or what I think somebody phrased it, clout chasers, and I thought that was a really, really cool phrase. So I'm going to go ahead and adopt it. Like if you get that kind of that clout chasers, so people who are trying to go into the most extreme cases, it's a complicated question. And again, this isn't to put Zio on blast. It's about us all communicating and talking about it in a hopefully really interesting way. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love it if you go check out Zio's video and give it a watch. Share it out, especially because in the end, that's actually going to promote the game more than you would expect. It seems weird. But I don't know. There's a human psychology here thing that's just so fascinating to me. Anyway, I know this was a different kind of video for y'all today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you want me to respond to other videos out there, obviously send them my way either on Twitter or on our Discord. And again, if you like the format, let me know. That's the whole point of responding, and that's the whole point of dialogue. So anyway, I don't know a good way to end this. I do apologize. Thanks for watching. For Ginger Prime Gaming, my name is Brian. Thanks again. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Take care.